Today and tomorrow, and also yesterday, we organized a Finissage weekend program for the exhibition Matter, Non-Matter, Antimatter that can be still seen until tomorrow, 6 o'clock, in the Light Yard 1-2 on the second floor of the ZKM. It's an exhibition about exhibitions, about past exhibitions, and their the different ways they can be digitized, and also it's about space, digital space, and how can it be accessed via different interfaces. We will learn more about digital spaces today, specifically from Stefan Schwingeler, Professor Dr. Stefan Schwingeler, who once worked at the ZKM, and but now he has been Professor of Media Studies at the HAWK in the Faculty of Design since 2018. Previously, he was Professor of Game Design at the Media Academy, Hochschule Stuttgart, and he is internationally one of the pioneers of game studies. His first book, entitled The Space Machine, analyzes space and perspective in computer games. His second book, Kunstwerk Computerspiel, examines the strategies of game art. And he directed Game Lab at the Staatliche Hochschule für Gestaltung, Karlsruhe, and has accompanied the Next Level Festival as an advisory board member and consultant. And as a curator, he has a very long list of exhibitions, but I will just mention that he was responsible for the exhibition ZKM Gameplay at the ZKM. And yeah, Stefan, please, the stage is yours.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to ZKM. It's really, really great to be here again after a couple of years. It was always and will always be my favorite workplace. It's really good to see new faces and old faces, old friends, and I'm really, really happy to be here. So, my task today is to think loudly with you. The first ideas for my talk today that I had with Livia and Felix about the topic involved reflecting on the topic of gamification in the context of exhibitions, museology, curatorial practice, and of course art history and media history. Gamification is a relatively new concept that refers to the application of game design principles and mechanics to non-game contexts, such as education or business. In essence, gamification is meant to enhance user motivation and engagement by introducing elements that tap into the psychological factors that underlie an individual's desire to play. The theoretical framework for gamification is based largely on self-determination theory and the concept of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Self-determination theory posits that people have three basic psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Gamification seeks to fulfill these needs through mechanisms such as feedback, rewards, and social interaction. At its core, gamification involves the use of game mechanics and design principles to create game-like experiences in non-game contexts. And this can be accompanied using a range of different techniques such as point systems, leaderboards, badges, leveling systems, among others. The same applies to the area of so-called serious games. Serious games, also known as applied games or gamification for positive impact, are gaming applications that have been designed to achieve an educational, social, or behavioral goal. They are interactive, engaging, and they try to be fun, but also incorporate game design elements and mechanics to encourage users to learn or adopt specific behaviors. Serious games are often developed in collaboration with experts from various fields such as education, psychology, healthcare, ecology, and so on and so forth. And they can be used in a wide range of contexts, including education, training, marketing, health, wellness, and of course social activism and propaganda and politics and so on. Critics refer to the psychological tricks that are enabling gamification as chocolate-covered broccoli. Gamification, especially in the context of business, in my opinion, is a symptom of late capitalism, and this is not what my focus should be today. Therefore, my approach has shifted a bit, and today I would like to talk from the perspective of art history and media theory about computer games and playful interactions that we have encountered in the broader context of curatorial practice as artworks rather than gamified artifacts, such as the toothbrush that you have seen. As we will see, playful interaction is deeply inscribed in the DNA of ZKM and is deeply inscribed into the DNA of media art in general. For the purpose of structuring my talk today, I have formed two rather robust chapters that are video games as exhibits and video games as exhibitions. Let's see what I mean by that. The history of the computer game begins in a specific situation that is interestingly resembles an exhibition. It all began with a misuse or abuse of an oscilloscope in 1958 when physicist William Higginbotham combined this electronic measuring device with an analog computer to create a tennis game called Tennis for Two. He developed the game, its interface, and the type of installation for the Brookhaven National Laboratory's open house für den Tag der offenen Tür, when the public was invited to visit the research facility. The Brookhaven National Laboratory, BNL, is a vast scientific research facility located in Upton, Long Island, New York, that is operated by the United States Department of Energy. I assume that it was not his intention to invent a new media genre and cultural practice, but rather to provide his visitors with an interesting and exciting way to engage with technology. In this sense, Tennis for Two was primarily a didactic artifact that served to mediate and communicate with its users, a serious game of some sort. Since the early 1970s, the computer game as a product has been institutionalized and commercialized by the computer game industry. Interestingly, computer games have always existed as exhibits as well as technically sophisticated installations in public spaces. Before the new medium penetrated the privacy of living rooms in the form of video consoles and personal computers and so on, computer game machines could be played in so-called arcades via coin-operated machines. What we see here is an arcade cabinet from 1985 called Hang On by the Japanese company Sega. The recipient sits on this fully movable model of the motorcycle while playing, and the screen is directly integrated into this construction to enhance the immersion. Arcade culture still exists today, of course, and borrows heavily from concepts that have been tested in the context of media art and experimental technology, and vice versa. The setups, constellations, constructions, and ultimately dispositives tested there also shaped early media art. Geoffrey Shaw's The Legible City from 1989 is a seminal classic piece from the ZKM collection that everybody knows here in the audience, I assume. It consists of a stationary bicycle and a computer-generated virtual city, for example, Karlsruhe, New York, that can be explored by pedaling the bike. As the user navigate, or the player navigates the virtual city, text and images are projected onto the walls around them, creating a dynamic multimedia experience. The legible city consists of large projection screens that display a virtual cityscape, a seemingly endless grid of streets and buildings. The user is provided with a stationary bicycle as an interface that is mounted on a pedestal, which serves as the interface for exploring the virtual environment. Discussing Geoffrey Shaw's artwork, The Legible City, Heinrich Klotz, the founding director of ZKM, referred to Johann Heusinger's seminal book Homo Ludens. He said, and this is a German quote now, und das Ganze hat etwas Spielerisches. Das Kunstwerk ist wieder Spiel geworden, der Mensch ein Homo Ludens. The whole thing has something playful about it. The artwork has again become a game, and man has become man the player. Homo Ludens. Klotz makes a clear distinction between two modes of the artwork, which require two specific forms of reception. One, seeing static images, and acting, secondly, with moving images. He says, falling silent in admiration when confronted with the pure act of seeing recedes in the face of the joy of discovering and acting when presented with the invitation to engage in interactivity. One crosses the border into the realm of play. One enjoys the freedom of an intellectual and sensual game. Interaction is never the quiet of contemplation, but always the moving image, action, playing with changing the parameters within limited possibilities. And this is a quote from 1997, I think. Numerous exhibitions since 1999 have been devoted to the products of artistic engagement with video games. Many internationally renowned artists have created works that refer to video games or that are video games. The Australian art historian Jason Wilson traced a media archaeological line from Nam June Paik's TV artworks to early computer games such as Pong. They were created at around the same time, and they also share the same zeitgeist, informed by technological utopianism in the context of the 60s and 70s. This evidences the historical connection between digital games and interactive media art. In an essay published in 2009, Söke Dinkler also linked video games and interactive media art, assigned them to different contexts, entertainment industry versus art world, and referred to them as an ungleiches Geschwisterpaar, dissimilar siblings. Interactive media art clearly belongs to the realm of art, whereas video games exist in the context of the entertainment industry. However, artists have now transferred video games to the art system context, utilizing various strategies. And today, there are art computer games that fall into the category of interactive media art as well as the category of video games. In her book Das systemische Bild, Inge Hinterwaldner remarks, again a German quote, diese Trennung in Computerspiele einerseits und interaktive Kunst andererseits lässt sich heute nicht mehr aufrechterhalten, da es künstlerische Computerspiele gibt. This division into interactive media art on the one side and video games on the other is no longer sustainable because there are now art video games. This is to wake you up after this theoretical remarks, and we see here a very cute little game. The affinities between computer games and media art and those different contexts are particularly evident in the work of Toshio Iwai. Toshio Iwai made this game called Otoki in 1987. This video footage we just saw shows some gameplay from the game. It is one of the first video games that I am aware of that is designed by a media artist. It is important to state, however, that Otoki is clearly situated in the context of the entertainment industry and outside the art world. It is still a great example for pushing boundaries and blurring lines, considering the connection between video games and art. The game that we see here is a side-scrolling shooter and contains generative music, meaning the soundtrack is being generated by playing the game in the first place. It's a musical instrument of some sort. The music and sound effects are dependent on the player's actions and the way she is interacting with the rule set of the game and the algorithms of the computer program. The topic of generative music and sound is the main theme in Toshio Iwai's body of work. He varied the theme in almost all of his pieces. Iwai was an artist in residence at ZKM, by the way, in 1994, and he did variations on the theme that are visible on this slide. His large-scale interactive installations like piano as image media are targeted on synesthesial effects, mainly the interplay of visual and auditive sensations. And these proven concepts from the realm of media art are included in commercial yet experimental video games by Toshio Iwai, for example, Sim Tunes from 1996 and Electroplankton here from 2005 for a Nintendo console. Iwai's body of work emphasizes that interactive media art and video games are extremely closely related but are happening in different contexts, the art world and the entertainment industry. Let us now explore together how the environment of a computer game can itself become a kind of exhibition. So we enter chapter 2 now. Computer games have the property or the quality of opening up spaces. They show us spatial configurations and are themselves experienced as spaces. And this is the starting point for thinking about how games themselves can become exhibition spaces. My example for a video game in art history and a kind of game exhibition hybrid is the artistic video game modification Ars Doom from 1995. 1995, the Austrian architect Orhan Kipczak was commissioned by Peter Weibel. At that time, he was artistic director of Ars Electronica, and he produced an interactive piece for the festival. The result was Ars Doom, a video game modification that is based on Doom 2. Maybe you know the video game Doom. It's a first-person shooter, and interestingly, the engine was open source, so they artists could use it for their own pieces. They used this id-Tech1 engine that he designed with his colleague Reinhard Urban. Ars Doom is a digitally constructed model of the Bruckner House in Linz. This is the venue where Ars Electronica took place in 1995. The replica was constructed with the help of the original blueprints of the Bruckner House. So this is it's a model of the exhibition space. Players navigate the spatial structures of the game. There, they encounter giant heads coming closer to the players. And these monsters are the portraits of artists who were part of Ars Electronica. Peter Weibel can be seen in the game too, by the way. That's him. The weapons, it's a first-person shooter, though, so you have to have weapons, right? And the weapons in this first-person shooter refer to artists from recent art history. For example, players can shoot with Namjoon Paik's TV remote, or they can use Joseph Beuys' cross. He has some crucifix. Or they use Arnulf Reiner's thumb. This game is about entering and penetrating the structures of Ars Electronica as an institution of art, standing for the art world system. Players become iconoclasts and destroy artworks and artists alike in the iconography of a first-person shooter. Kipczak commented on the aggressive impetus of the piece, and he said, "I chose those artists because they were well known, and their art had a brutal aspect to it. This is important for an ego shooter, first-person shooter. With Arnulf Reiner, you paint over artworks. With Hermann Nitsch, you soak them in blood. And with Baselitz, you turn them upside down. So you could shoot at the pictures on the wall and flip them upside down, or you can cross them with pig's blood, representing Hermann Nitsch's oeuvre. This game, of course, is an inside joke, a tongue-in-cheek take on the art world. The theme of entering and penetrating a system is multi-layered in the piece. First of all, the players invade the space of Ars Electronica. Secondly, Ars Doom creators Kipchak and Urban entered the very structures of the software Doom 2 in order to appropriate and alter them. And thirdly, with Ars Doom, a new material entered the system of art, namely the video game as a new artistic material. Ars Doom is not the only computer game modification that doubles the space in which it is exhibited and simulates it within its structures. Another example is the series Museum Meltdown by Palle Thorsson and Tobias Bernstrup from 1996 to 1999. That's Peter again, and here we have Ars Doom. We have Museum Meltdown, again a brutal take on the museum as an institution. Museum Meltdown is available in 3 different versions and represents 3 different museums that the recipients force their way into during the game. Accordingly, each version has been exhibited in the museum it depicts. The first version from 1996 is a modification of the game Duke Nukem 3D, and it represents a model of the Aachen Museum of Modern Art in Copenhagen. The last one here is the Moderna Museet in Stockholm. It's a Half-Life modification. It was made especially for the museum. And what's rather cute, in this third version, it is possible, for example, to smash the large glass by Marcel Duchamp with a crowbar. The map of the Stockholm Museum not only depicts the rooms of the museum, but also the hanging and the placement of the artworks as they can be seen in the real space of the museum. Thus, it is possible to actually be in the rooms of the museum as a recipient, while within the computer game, one seems to walk through the mapped rooms and destroy the artworks that are also present in the physical space. Here's the large glass, which is a famous piece by Marcel Duchamp, and you can smash it with a crowbar. The crowbar, of course, for video game connoisseurs, you know it, is a very famous weapon from Half-Life 2. There are many other examples of computer game modifications in which museums of exhibition spaces are recreated. The Quake map No Room Gallery, for example, by Imre Oswald and Florian Musser, is a replica of the annex of the Hamburg Kunsthalle. Chris Riley's series Everything I Do is Art, but Nothing I Do Makes Any Difference is for the game Half-Life 2, and it includes a replica of the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And in Hunter Jonathan's work, Jeff Koons Must Die, works of art by Jeff Koons can be destroyed. Computer game modifications in which exhibition spaces are recreated can be described as a subcategory of artistic access to computer games. First-person shooters, namely whose scenery is moved directly into the operating system of art or adapted to it. Starting from Ars Doom, one colleague of mine, Tilman Baumgärtel, identifies a certain tradition of using computer games as a commentary on the art world and its institutions. The works evoke a critical, brutal and aggressive impetus towards a traditional art represented by institutions. One possible interpretation, of course, is that the iconoclastic gestures suggest a hierarchy of artistic media and radically challenge the supremacy of traditional artistic forms of expression and their institutional representation and preservation by introducing a new medium that is capable of artistic expression also. In 1991, Geoffrey Shaw created this seminal piece, The Virtual Museum. And this virtual museum is a 3-dimensional computer-generated museum space comprising an immaterial constellation of rooms and exhibits. A circular, motorized, rotating platform holds a large video projection monitor, a computer, and a chair from which the viewer interactively controls her journey through the virtual museum. Forwards and backwards movement of the chair cause corresponding motion by the viewer through the virtual museum space represented on the screen. Turning the chair produces a rotation of this virtual image space and also a synchronous physical rotation of the platform. The virtual museum is made up of 5 rooms that have the same appearance as the real rooms in which the installation is located. This establishes an augmented conjunction of the real and virtual spaces, as well as a paradoxical conjunction of the real and the virtual. To make this explicit, the first virtual room shows a replicated representation of the installation itself. So, when first seated, the viewer faces both the real and virtual monitor screens, and these real and virtual realities are exactly aligned. Then, as the viewer starts to travel through the virtual museum, she in effect transports herself out of this chair and sees the represented installation with its vacated chair as an object outside of her virtual point of view. This is a picture from the opening of ZKM's first dedicated video game exhibition called Welt der Spiele, World of Games, in 1997. As you might know, that I myself completely redesigned Welt der Spiele when I was working at ZKM, and it became the now present ZKM gameplay. And in this first version, there was this beautiful installation called Labyrinthos. It must be here somewhere, I don't know, somewhere, some parts of it may be still there. The installation Labyrinthos was a ZKM production, and it was based on a historical computer game called Midi Maze. The players had to track each other down in a labyrinth that imitated the architecture of the real media museum of that time. Thus, the game included a complete model of ZKM's media museum in 3D. Players could roam freely in the virtual museum space, and up to 8 players could sit together at this gigantic console, which was a multiplayer shooter for this time in the museum. Very peculiar thing, and I couldn't find it when I recurated the world of games. Now we jump into today. Today, the immaterial display from the project Beyond Matter is a key installation in the exhibition that we are closing today, Matter, Non-Matter, and Antimatter. It allows visitors to move around the space, to come into contact with the numerous artifacts in 2 fundamentally different digital models of the historical exhibitions Iconoclash and Les Immatérieux. The creation of an exhibition through an immaterial constellation on a digital display has, of course, as we have seen, been tested by Geoffrey Shaw and by other video game artists before. The Virtual Museum from 1999 serves, of course, as an important reference for the current project. The immaterial display consists of a curved screen that serves as a display. And the installation is equipped with a driver's seat, a term Shaw used to describe this kind of chair equipped with a controller in which a self-regulating joystick provides extensive accessibility. And that, of course, draws heavily from concepts tested and elaborated in the field of video games and video game culture, and is influenced by 80s arcade culture. In this immaterial display, the categories of games as exhibits and games as exhibitions are combined. To summarize, in the museum and exhibition context, the influence of video games are much more noticeable than it's apparent at first glance. Their techniques, dispositives, controls, conventions, and content have inscribed themselves in artworks as well as in museums and exhibitions themselves. Thank you. gehe ab, ja? All right. Are there any questions?
Kann ich einfach?
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan, for this wonderful presentation and also for contextualizing the iconoclash model. Are there any questions from the audience to Stefan? We will have the chance to discuss with him these questions throughout the discussion later on. If there are no questions.
Okay, you have a question.
Oh well, not yet. Then, thanks a lot, Stefan. And then I just stay here and I introduce our next speaker, who will bring us to a very different discipline. So Torben Färber is a particle physicist currently affiliated with the KIT, but he did his PhD work on opera neutrino oscillation experiment at the University of Hamburg. He moved to a postdoctoral position at DESY, working on the Bell and Bell 2 experiments. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Färber continued to work on Bell 2 at his second postdoctoral position at the University of British Columbia in Canada. In 2018, he became the leader of a Helmholtz Young Investigators Group at DESY and the University of Hamburg. Since August 21, Färber is a full professor for experimental particle physics at KIT. His group focuses on the development of new methods of colorimeter reconstruction, including ultra-fast real-time algorithms. Färber's group works on searches for light-dark matter, long-lived particles, dark scalars, and axion-like particles, and flavor physics. We invited Torben to reflect on the exhibition. Well, first of all, obviously our title is an initial point that can be understood from many different disciplinary perspectives. Quite naively and ignorantly, we named the exhibition Matter, Non-Matter and Antimatter. Although we didn't know, we will hear more about that. Antimatter is boring. So therefore we hear more about dark matter in the next half an hour. And please, the stage is yours. Thank you very much.
Präsentiere ich selber oder wie? Oder macht ihr das?
Deine Präsentation ist hinten.
Okay.
Das wäre jetzt nur für.
Das schalten wir nachher einfach einmal um.
Das musst du gleich sagen, natürlich.
We need a second to set this up.
Deine Präsentation machst du über den hier.
Und wo schließe ich ihn?
Das ist. Andere Seite.
So I'm an experimental physicist, so I need a few seconds to set up my experiment, which is not working. That's normal. Very good. Good. Welcome. Thanks for the nice introduction. So I was asked to send my CV here, and I told them this is my academic CV that you would typically hear in a conference when I talk to particle physicists. So this is what you get. So I will talk about a topic, and the original email that reached me from ZKM, originally I thought it was spam because it was so spot on what I researched, but it was not coming from my typical colleagues. The title Beyond Matter is really a title that I gave a talk in the past when talking to particle physicists. And I think my mission today is, is probably to blow your mind. I will talk about something which is deeply scientific, something at least I know, and there are a few particle physics colleagues in the room, by the way, and they also know about this. And this is dark matter. So if you know what dark matter is, your mind is already blown. That is good. If not, I will tell you what this is. There are no equations in my talk, but there are a few definitions at least. And let me start with the definition of what I call matter. In simple words, matter is stuff. Things you can touch, maybe, right? Table is matter. That is matter. A bit more technically, it's something that you can count. It's a material substance, and that constitutes the observable universe. That sounds bold and big, and it is bold and big, okay? That is matter. Matter is stuff. Matter also has a mass. You can weigh matter. I can put the table on a scale and I will get that it's, 15 kilograms. So all the stuff I could put on a scale and I can get a mass out of that. Good, so I'm a particle physicist. I'm not working with tables. I'm working with elementary particles. And a few of you might remember from school that table is not an elementary particle, okay? I take as an example a glass of water. A glass of water is made out of water molecules, or at least what is in the glass of water is water molecules. Now, testing your knowledge from school, water molecule is an oxygen and 2 hydrogen atoms. By the way, I totally love to get feedback, so if you could nod or shake your head, I can real-time adjust my talk. Awesome, very good, yes. By the way, at least one of you has to do something later, so you can already mentally arrange with that problem as well while I'm talking. Good, so we have atoms, we have oxygen and hydrogen atoms in water. Good, this is not my stuff. I, as a particle physicist, I look into matter much deeper than that. You probably remember from school, and I will not talk about oxygen because it's a bit too complicated. Let's talk about hydrogen. It consists of a proton and an electron. Yes, good. Yeah. This is not really what I care about a particle physicist, because a proton is actually not an elementary particle. A proton has a substructure. A proton, if you look deeper, consists of 3 particles, and finally these are elementary particles, and we call them quarks. So a proton consists of 3 quarks. This is all matter, standard stuff, right? We teach this to our students very early on. This is well established. This is all the matter we know. This is all the matter we know. I can explain everything in this room, not your thoughts, but the material substances, with these particles. There are actually not that many. On the left side, you see in different sizes, different elementary particles. The top 6 we would call quarks. You just met 2 of them because 3 quarks, 2 up-type quarks, they live in the top left corner, and the down-type quark make up a proton. They bound and form, and then they are a proton. They have some bigger sisters, brothers, charm quark, top quark, strange quark, bottom quark. They have a mass. The bigger the bubble here is, the heavier the particle is. The top quark, for example, on the top right is something we can artificially produce at particle accelerators. It has the mass of a gold atom, but it's a fundamental particle. We don't know how this is possible, but it is possible. We can observe it. And then we have a few other particles on the right side. We just had a discussion before this talk, and people heard about the Higgs boson. So this is also there on the right, also a very heavy particle, but these are all the particles we know to explain all the matter in the universe. And I told you, I think, in passing that antimatter is boring. I thought it's just too boring for this talk. Antimatter is mysterious, but it's nothing very special. Antimatter is exactly the same. And now for the physicists in the room, just all quantum numbers are flipped. So an electrically positively charged particle, matter particle, will have the opposite charge as an antimatter particle. They don't exist here in that room in large quantities, but we can easily produce them in our lab. There is not that much magic to it. Good. So this is what I'm not talking about. And now, get ready to have your mind blown. I have to introduce a few things. The first thing is that I assume that most of you have a totally wrong understanding of our universe and the fact how empty our universe actually is. So I will show you how empty our universe actually is, because you have to understand this if you want to understand dark matter. Good. I'm totally not used to standing still. I have to move around, so if you can't hear me, please bear with me. This is Earth. Okay, we live on Earth. Earth is made out of stuff. It's certainly matter. It has a radius of 6,500 kilometers. Sounds pretty big. I can tell you it's a bloodily boring small. And if you look at the universe, the Earth is absolutely irrelevant. I will come to this in a second. You can calculate the volume, assuming that this is a sphere, and you can also weigh the Earth, not by putting it on a scale, but by observing how it observes when it rotates around the sun, okay? And the Earth is a pretty dense object. It is 5 grams per cubic centimeter, if you remember the glass of water. Water has a density of 1 gram per cubic centimeter. Earth is mostly made out of stone, iron core. It's a pretty heavy, very dense object. That is Earth. Good. Now, the problem starts that you probably have seen images like that in school, and you think this is our solar system. Good. I mean, yeah, this is our solar system, but it's a very artistic representation of our solar system. And the problem with this is it gets the dimensions completely wrong. Good. And now you have to pay attention, because I will now show you how it really looks like. So everything I show you now is really in scale. So I put the sun, this is now the sun. The sun is actually quite big and massive, so this is a dimension that starts to impress me. The sun density, however, is much lower than the Earth density, right? The sun would almost swim on water, not quite, but almost. This is the sun, and now on the bottom you see the distance from the sun in 1 million kilometer steps. I just let it sink for a second. I have no idea where you live, but 1 million kilometers is pretty far already, okay? The sun is pretty big. Now, school knowledge, what is the next thing after sun that comes in our solar system? There's Venus, there's also Mercury. Mercury is the correct answer here. So, see if you can spot Mercury. I will now move through the solar system in steps of about 4 million kilometer steps. Remind you, we're waiting for Mercury to pop up, right? Big thing. So up to here, a light from the sun has traveled 1 minute. There is bloody nothing, okay? It's just empty space. Are you still with me? Remember, Mercury. Have you seen it yet? Have you seen it? Okay, that's actually bad. That camera has that good projectors that you can actually see Mercury. Usually you would never see this. Yes, so you have seen Mercury, and this is the correct size of Mercury, roughly. It's actually, it's a tenth of a pixel, but this is, okay, this is, if you want to see how large Earth is, this is Earth. By the way, it's 115 kilometers away. Okay, my message is this is completely empty. There is nothing in our solar system. Just a few pictures. The only relevant things are actually things like Jupiter. They have an actual size. Good. This is the solar system, pretty empty, okay? This is the solar system. I put the sun in the middle. I had to increase the size by a factor of 20 because the sun is only 1 pixel large. The only other thing that I even dare to draw is Jupiter. Jupiter is roughly a 20th of a pixel large in this picture. And I make a sphere around this whole thing because I want to put it on a scale and weigh our solar system. I still like Pluto as a planet. Good, people nodding, excellent. I have nerds in the room, I like that. Good, so this would be the size of the solar system if Pluto is still with us, roughly. I calculate the radius and I can weigh all the things in our solar system. Those of you that paid attention know that actually weighing the solar system is pretty simple because it's completely empty. The only thing you actually have to weigh is the sun. All the rest, even Jupiter, is just a tiny, tiny little bit in our universe. The density, however, of our solar system is really small. It's 10 to the minus 12 grams per cubic centimeter. 10 to the minus 12 is a 0, comma, then many, many zeros, 12 of them, and then the first number. There is absolutely no matter density in our universe. We live in a very luxurious place, the Earth, which is actually a pretty nice matter object, a lot of stuff here. Good. Again, we are still in the boring part of the talk, by the way. Now it becomes interesting. Now we move to actually nice, large things in our universe. This is the Andromeda Galaxy. Has anyone seen the Andromeda Galaxy? This is not a trick question. You can see it with your naked eye, not from Karlsruhe, but if you're in the Alps or if you're in a nice place without much light. This is our sister galaxy, the nearest galaxy. To remind you, we live in the Milky Way. That is the name our galaxy has. This is the nearest other galaxy. This galaxy is so incredibly large that measuring the diameter of this picture in kilometers is completely meaningless. We measure this in light years. The distance light has to travel in 1 year. The diameter is 150,000 light years. Good. I can calculate the mass of the Andromeda Galaxy by counting all the stars in there, and we know that all the planets are, however large they are, it's completely irrelevant. I calculate also the matter density of Andromeda by putting a sphere around this. We can discuss about the details if it's a valid mathematical operation to put a sphere around this, but this is maybe for the discussion. The density now is 10 to the minus 25 grams per cubic centimeter. The thing is completely empty. It looks beautiful. It looks like there is a lot of stuff going on. But actually, there is nothing. These are just the stars that we can see, and our instruments are not precise enough to actually resolve them. Good. This is the Andromeda Galaxy. And now the problem starts. Actually, this is the solution of the problem. So this is Vera Rubin. This is her sitting in her lab in the 1970s. She looked at the Andromeda Galaxy, and she picked a few stars in the Andromeda Galaxy and calculated how fast they rotate around the center of the Andromeda Galaxy. Our Milky Way is a rotating galaxy. Andromeda is also a rotating galaxy. You see in black points which stars she picked and measured. And the money plot, as we call this, she wanted to produce is this. On this axis of the plot, you see the distance from the center of the Andromeda Galaxy. So on the very left side, you're at the very center of the nice rotating Andromeda Galaxy. On the very right side, you are very far out in the Andromeda Galaxy. All the stars are rotating around a massive black hole in the center, which is then shown on the y-axis, is how fast you rotate around the center. You have been at a Kettenkarussell, for example, right? If you're very far out and still want to stay somehow in here, you cannot rotate too fast. If you are on the outside of the Andromeda Galaxy and rotate too fast, you just fly away. This clearly doesn't happen because the Andromeda Galaxy is there. So if you're close to the center, we expect that things rotate fast. If you're far away, we expect that things rotate slow, roughly the red curve. Let's measure this. And this really means nature is broken, okay? This is absolutely not what we expected. The very left part of the plot is a little bit hard to get right because there is a black hole, topic for another talk. On the right side, you see, however, that even stars that are very far away from the center can rotate very quick and are not flying away. Oh, this is totally mind-blowing. This should never have happened. Okay, fine. Why would I care about the Andromeda Galaxy? It's just one thing in the universe. Now, it's actually much harder to measure this in the Milky Way. The problem is, if you want to measure this in the Milky Way, is that we are part of the Milky Way. We are rotating in this mass of stars. But now, with good instruments, we can do the same measurement for our Milky Way, same meaning of the x-axis. By the way, the Earth is much smaller than this. We are roughly, by the way, if you draw galaxies, you typically don't even measure light years. You change to an even crazier unit, which is kiloparsecs. 1 kiloparsec is 3,000 light years. These dimensions are mind-blowing, okay? We are at roughly 8 kiloparsecs, and you see it's the same pattern. Stars that are far away from the center in the Milky Way are rotating very fast around the center. This cannot be explained with the matter stuff that I just showed you and the masses of particles that we have. By the way, I will not show you an answer to this problem. This is a standing problem in particle physics, and the answer will give you a Nobel Prize. What we think actually happens is that we, matter, the stuff we talk about, including antimatter, is actually a small fraction of the universe. There must be something around us that we call dark matter, dark just because we can't see it. And we think this fills the universe, and at some places it's much denser, and things like the Andromeda Galaxy or the Milky Way is attracted gravitationally. So this, by the way, is also part now. So I will have now matter. Matter is a white billiard ball, and I have dark matter, which is a black billiard ball. What we think happens is that these two can somehow attract each other by gravitational force, just like the sun attracts the earth or the earth attracts the apple falling from the tree. If you want to make sure that things rotating far away from the center stay intact, you have to put something very heavy in the middle part, something very heavy that is not visible, because clearly there are no stars. The stars do not account for all the matter. And the crazy thing is, it's not a small thing. We actually have to put 4 times more dark matter in the center of our galaxies than we have normal matter to explain the rotations. Mind's blown yet or not? A little bit? Good. This is my favorite picture of science right now. This is not a real picture. It is a simulation. But this is a simulation where we think our universe really looks like. What you see here is, starting from the Big Bang, it was simulated how matter and dark matter, assuming gravitational interaction, actually develops. All the black lines are densities of dark matter. Everything that is yellow and looks nice is where there's also normal matter. And again, the dark matter doesn't really care so much about the normal matter. The normal matter just moves where there is already a lot of dark matter because of gravitational attraction. Every yellow blob here, by the way, is multiple galaxies. It's not our sun or so that is nice, right? This is a picture of huge areas of the universe that you see here. I'm a particle physicist. I can explain everything, so probably there should be the solution somewhere in the particles I know. We tried this. It doesn't work. None of the particles in the physics we know of acts like dark matter, in a sense that it only acts gravitationally, but barely interacts with us in any other way. This is mind-blowing part 2, right? Not that we are just a quarter or so of the mass in the universe. We also have no idea what it is. It's actually even worse. So we know it's stuff, so we know, or we hope we know, it's something countable. We don't know if we talk about something very light and just very many of these new particles, or something very heavy and just a few of them. Again, that's why I use these numbers here. And what we think is a way to detect this, and now in a second we come to this tennis ball, and I hope there is a volunteer already to help me with this. Do you want? Very good. So what we think is happening is, this is the same picture you've seen before. You have 1 minute or 2, then I need you. Can already get. This is a bag of dark matter. How good can you throw? Then let's take 3 maybe. Okay. 1 second. Don't throw yet. So what we think happens is the dark matter is just there. The Andromeda Galaxy, or in this case the Milky Way, is where there is a lot of dark matter, and the Milky Way is rotating. This is good, because if dark matter is just there and we are just there, then this is pretty boring. But if we are rotating in this cloud of dark matter, the dark matter is actually flying through us at a very high speed. So in reality, we are flying through the dark matter, but it's much easier to think that we are not flying right now with 220 kilometers per second. Okay, mind blown, 0.3. So we are at rest, and the dark matter is flying with 220 kilometers per second. That's more reassuring, I hope. That's your target velocity. 220 kilometers per second would be good. Good. So what we have here on Earth is just normal matter stuff. We don't have anything else. So we somehow hope that dark matter and normal matter, if they meet each other, they somehow interact. We know this interaction must be very weak because it's not happening all the time. And now let's see how we think this actually looks like. And now can you please switch to my other screen? That does not work for whatever. That's normal again. But when you do particle physics for many, many years, this is just what every day looks like. So the idea we have to find dark matter, very good, is we put something in the way of the dark matter where we want to detect the interaction. So we want to see the bangs of dark matter particles with normal matter particles. We already know that this is a very hard thing to do because it rarely interacts. So good solution is put a lot of matter in the way of the individual dark matter particles. And this is what we tried here. So in reality, we are not using tennis balls, okay? In reality, we are using very expensive, for example, silicon crystals that we cool down to very low temperatures, because one problem you're already seeing, you see here the readout of our sensor. The sensor is attached to the back, by the way. Things are wobbling around. There is noise, there is random fluctuation. And now I will not move anymore. You can try to hit our detector with dark matter. Please now. Yeah, don't hit me too hard. 220 kilometers per second. Okay, very good. But you already see what happens, okay? So the sensor is attached somewhere. We have a lot of possible targets for dark matter. Thanks a lot. When you hit this, you see these signals. And this is what we're trying to do. Can you switch the screen again, please? Good. So we don't have tennis balls, but we have massive detectors. What you see here on the right side are actually these are 3 stories of purification system, readout systems. On the left side, you see our actual dark matter detector. That is larger than this lecture hall here. In order to shield this from everything else, right? We want to see the single, very rarely interacting dark matter particles in these detectors. We do many things. First thing is we cool this down to absolute zero or near absolute zero to remove any vibration. This is happening here on the left part. We surround the whole thing with ultra pure water to make sure that we understand everything that's going on in there. We actually put this thing deep underground. This thing is sitting in Italy, roughly 1 kilometer under a mountain. You feel like James Bond going there because there is actually a highway, and there is a highway exit under the mountain, and you exit and you are in the lab. So we are waiting for these rare dark matter particles hitting out the inner part of our detectors and trying to read this out. So far, we have not seen dark matter with this technique. We haven't given up. We built these things larger, even more sensitive. Right? This question, there is 4 times dark matter than matter. We somehow have to find this. Maybe there is another solution, and this is what my colleagues, for example, from KIT are also working on with me. We actually try to produce dark matter ourselves. This is what particle physicists do. We take particles and antiparticles, we crash them together. Normally, we produce just other normal particles and measure them in detectors that are much larger than this lecture hall. But maybe we are lucky and we produce 1 or 2 dark matter particles. So in order to detect them, there are 2 techniques, and my colleagues, so Giacomo is here with me, Moritz and Jonas, they can show you this outside on VR headsets, how this really looks like. There are 2 solutions what we think could happen. We produce dark matter, and then dark matter, as we just saw, basically does nothing. So we produce things in our detector and then it escapes. We will see things that are not there. The other thing is dark matter could do things that normal matter would not do. What normal matter, for example, does not do is flying a little bit and then decaying. So you introduced me that I search for long-lived particles. This is exactly this. Particles that are long-lived. Long-lived for you guys, so ballpark nanosecond. This is long-lived for me, not years. Nanoseconds. Nanoseconds flies a meter or so, and then it decays. And you can see these particles in the VR headsets. There's an image of such a particle physics detector that KIT is deeply involved with. By the way, also the other one, the other detector I showed you, KIT physicists are working on this. This is the Bell 2 experiment that was also mentioned in the beginning. It's one of the 2 very large detector facilities we have in the world. This one is in Japan. The other one is at CERN in Switzerland. Both of them, in parts, search for dark matter. And from this detector, you can see the VR headsets outside. Good. I don't have an answer, but I would like to add dark matter to the dictionary because this will not go away. Okay? We think it's a countable substance of so far unknown type that constitutes at least 80% of the matter in the universe. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this great presentation. It was very informative. And, and I would like to ask the audience if you have any questions. A lot, but after. That's a great answer. And we will have the time to have a look at the installation outside, the VR headset and the screen in the break after the next presentation. And so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Again. So, and we saw the Earth also on the screen, which is fitting to today's date. It's Earth Day today, by the way, the 22nd of April. But we will carry on with another short presentation by the artist Jeremy Bailey, who is a Toronto-based, self-proclaimed famous media artist. And I quote, "Since the early noughties, Bailey has plowed a compelling and often hilarious road through the various developments of digital communication technologies." A quote by, I end quote, Morgan Quaintance on Rhizome. His work, Jeremy's work, has been presented widely, including solo and group exhibitions at, for example, the Punk Gallery in Berlin, the Whitechapel Gallery in London, Lima in Amsterdam, and so on and so forth. His commissions include projects for the MCA Chicago, the FACT in Liverpool, and a new museum in New York, and now the ZKM. Because Jeremy, for the exhibition Matter, Non-Matter, Antimatter, prepared the artwork The Perfect Museum. It's actually an artwork that solved a long-standing problem. Indeed. So we've been working on this for decades, for centuries, to create the perfect museum, and our exhibition Matter, Non-Matter, Antimatter also ask questions about, in this direction, how to create a museum, even if it's not perfect, in digital space. So fortunately, the perfect museum is already here, and it will be introduced by Jeremy Bailey. The stage is yours. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to blow your minds, but in a different way. We're just going to plug in my phone. I'm going to present on my phone, and I have to get changed. I'm not really quite comfortable. I'm going to be using up space. I'd encourage you, if you're just your mind's so blown that you want to run up on the stage and use the app with me, you can do that. But the first thing to blow your minds is I'm not just wearing one pair of pants, I'm wearing two. And I find it much more comfortable just to wear these shorter versions of jeans. So that's normally what I wear. I don't wear a coat, and I wear a turtleneck. Very inspired by Steve Jobs, a brilliant man who invented the phone I'm about to use. I like to joke that I worked so hard that the bottoms of these pants just like ripped right off just in the lab as I was running around. So I'm going to show you the perfect museum. I'm still looking for user feedback. So I don't think it's perfect yet. Maybe I don't need shoes today. But it's getting close. And I'm, first of all, just like so humbled and so excited to be here at ZKM. I call myself a famous new media artist. I think all of you are famous new media artists too, and you're going to find out why. But ZKM is a famous media art museum, famous new media art museum. So it's where all of us come together to congregate to feel great. So I feel fantastic in the warm glow of what is like the temple of new media. And what better way to change the world than right here on stage in front of all of you. You'll remember this moment, not just because we discovered dark matter, or we're not really sure what it is, or that my legs are spectacular, but also because we're going to see maybe what the future looks like today. So, of course, the future does start with an app, and I'll open it in a second, but what's more important really is me or you. We can debate who later, but it really starts with an acknowledgement that ZCAM asked me to be here, but they asked me to solve a problem for all of us. And they asked me to make something in response to two previous new media exhibitions, Les Immatériaux, I did take French for 13 years, damn it, and Iconoclash. And you can see those exhibitions remixed and digitized and non-digitized upstairs. You know what, I'm gonna take a glass of water. Not planned. And I have a little installation up there where you can lay down and use this app in your own time. But actually, true story, I was supposed to be here for the opening. It's great. Yeah, it's like, but my retina detached. So I didn't have an eye, like I lost this eye for a period of time. And I thought, oh, this new media artist is getting kind of old. I'm feeling that, you know, I turned 40 a few years ago, and at the hospital where they operated on my eye in real time, they said, you know what they say, the warranty expires after 40. And I was like, I don't know that they say that, but I'm happy to know now that I'm on the other side of the warranty. Regardless, sometimes, as artists and as humans, it can feel like we're always chasing the new, and we need the new thing, and we're always making things. And so these are some of the thoughts that were going through my head as I was looking at how could I bring these old exhibitions to life? How could I breathe life into this flickering corpse? Museums like this do a pretty good job of it, right? They put on exhibitions that a few people come to and maybe a few people understand, but it's really hard. So how do we make it more relatable? So let me just show you. So it starts with an app. These are some of the other apps that I use on a daily basis. There's the app for garbage in the city of Calgary I live in. There's the Deutsche Bahn app, but I'm gonna press this P, which is the perfect museum. Okay, and here I am. In beautiful selfie. Why am I wearing a hat? I normally don't do that. But that's available on my website. It's a swag, a 40th anniversary swag. It's really, I sell it at cost, but I haven't been selling very many. So if you go to jeremybailey.net, get one. Anyway, so it starts with your face. And here I am. Am I the perfect museum? Maybe. I work all day long as a creator. We're all creators now, right? We're always creating new content. The world demands that we make new things. And so, we go to these museums and we're looking at old new things, and I'm thinking to myself, hey, I need a way to make more new things about the old things, and I'm just caught in this constant cycle of making new things. And wouldn't it be great if we could take the old things and help them be new? And so the thought came to me that, well, maybe we could become museums. Like, what if I was the museum? What if every time I was on TikTok or sharing a video on Instagram, I was the museum, or you were the museum? And so that's possible. That technology makes that possible. Augmented reality makes it possible. So I'm going to show you how this works. So my face is going to become a museum. We have the museums down here on the bottom. You can make some adjustments if you like to the lighting in the app up here, tone and things like that. But I'm not going to I think this looks okay. We didn't do much of a dress rehearsal. My hair looks all right. I mean, my eye's dead, but whatever. Okay, so we have the three museums down here on the bottom. There's a generic museum is the first one. So, okay, it pops up. I'm going to try not to raise my eyebrows, but you can see this is just like a traditional museum that you're used to. Columns, marble. Oh, there you go. See, I raised my eyebrows and things are already happening. Now, this is another museum that's a ZKM museum, actually. ZKM originally was supposed to be a REM Cool House design, and it was going to be a video cube like this. And when I looked at the renderings, for some reason there were Marlboro ads, like cigarette ads, running on the maquettes. And so I guess they had an innovative funding model that they abandoned to potentially just advertise cigarettes to pay for new media art, because it's very expensive. Anyway, I'm going to choose the classic museum, and you can see the app is already responding, but I'm gonna explain it to you step by step. So the first thing is now I'm in the museum. This is ZCam Classic. You might recognize it from the cafe outside, the main hall. So I changed the floor texture a little bit. I found some nice marble that I thought was an upgrade, but the original terracotta tile and that kind of weird beige color that everything in Germany has, there we go. And there I am. Okay, so now I'm gonna raise my eyebrows. I know I keep triggering it because I tend to raise my eyebrows, but the idea is you raise your eyebrows to trigger, let me show you, and then I have to cover my mouth. Oh my God, this is a mess, hang on. I have to, okay, all right. So if I raise my eyebrows, but don't open my mouth yet, because that's the next step. So I'm just covering my mouth here, because then you'll see like it's gonna rotate through hundreds of artworks and exhibitions from the past, the exhibitions we're celebrating today for the Finissage. And now when you like one, when you see one you like, you can open your mouth. And I'm gonna do that in a second, but I just want you to see that there's dynamic lighting and that my face is actually an artwork too. It's interacting with the exhibition. So I'm just gonna open my mouth here and you'll see what happens next. Okay, now, by opening your mouth like in shock, ooh, I like that exhibition, you're given sort of an interactive, oopsie daisy, you're given, oh no, oh, hang on a second, let me redo it. Oh boy. Okay, it's a little tricky, but you get full, what I'm calling curatorial physics. So if I put the phone down, the objects will fall on my face. If I put it up, they'll fall down. Now the idea here is once you have the artworks, if you're a really good curator, you should be able to organize this and make it look good. I obviously have a little bit of work to do to get better at setting up an exhibition, but does it really matter? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of cool. Hang on. Now, if you're really, really good at it, of course, you can just tap the screen. And now, this is like kind of, if Livia was up here, I would invite her up to organize this exhibition. This is just all the artworks at once on my face. But, I don't like it as much because I can't see myself, but I think if you're really into getting everything right in its place, look, it looks just like upstairs. It's perfect. It's awesome. Yeah. So that's kind of how it works. Now, you might think that's not enough, and of course, there's always one more thing. And so that one more thing actually is, let's see if I can get this to work. I thought it was working. I think if you're just around, oh, it's not making a sound. It should be making a sound. Hang on a second. That's interesting. Okay, well, you can see there's supposed to be a sound that the score is going up because I've been talking about the art. And so you can see that 116, 117, 118. Oh, come on. If I'm just opening my mouth a lot, blah, 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 there, the score goes up. And so really, this is to give if you're going to be the curator, you got to learn to talk about the art. And so it's just kind of to gamify that experience to make the art, being a curator and ultimately a museum, which involves many roles, not just curating, technical staff, all the installation design, lighting, stage production, education programs. It's a lot of talking. So you got to get used to that. Anyway, once you have something you like, and maybe I do like this, you just snap a pic. So I'm going to snap a pic. There, oh, I don't know. That's not a good. Well, yeah, okay. Well, let's say you can save that to your camera roll or share it. Let's share it. It is what it is. You have to just improvise, go with the flow. The new thing is going to be tomorrow. Anyway, you'll have another chance at it. So let's put this on Instagram because I think that's where, as a story, what do we think? Story, post, or message? History. This is history. A story only lasts a day. Post lasts forever. Post? Wow. Okay. This is serious. I should have thought more about my exhibition design. Okay, so announcing, what should we say? Introducing the future, the perfect museum, i.e., you? No, that says I do. No, let's just do comma. you. Okay. This is also a way to plug that you can follow me at Jeremy Bailey on Instagram. And I'll add the hashtags later, but the app is also available for download. So I'd encourage you all to get the app. You can use it upstairs on a plinth we made as a bed. It's got little stairs, so you feel like a real museum while you're laying down and taking selfies. But otherwise, if you go to theperfectmuseum.com, you too can be a perfect museum. So thank you so much, everyone. Only available for iOS at the moment. Android coming soon. Android's coming soon. Just iOS right now. I'm sorry. I know the scientists are mad at me. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. So, our program is, well, we have a break now, if there are no questions, and I suppose that there are no questions since there were no questions before, but yes, Stefan, wait.
33,000 unread emails give me anxiety. How do you cope with that in your life?
Well, I don't have a lot of time, you know. So yeah, one thing I have no time for emails. So yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I'm slow, aren't I? I'm sorry. Yeah, I just go with the flow. It's the internet.
So thank you very much. Now we have a half-an-hour break, and you have the chance to run to the exhibition, try out the Perfect Museum, and come back, or to have a look at the installation by the colleagues of Torben just in front of the entrance. So thank you for being with us, and we will come back with a discussion with all the presenters and Alistair Hudson, the director of ZGM, in approximately half an hour. So thank you for returning after this short break. Before we embark on a discussion together with today's presenters, we will hear about the Biodesign Lab from Julia Ils and Ludmila Voropai, who are both members of the Biodesign Lab, which is housed by the HFG, the Hochschule für Gestaltung, just next door. And it is very easy to find. And the Biodesign Lab also contributed to the exhibition Matter, Non-Matter, Antimatter with a piece that reacted on the site of one site of Les Immatériaux, one of the 60, with the title Second Skin. This installation is called Second Skin N+1 since it is new version and topical version of this experiment from the 80s by Thierry Chaput and Jean-François Lyotard. So let me introduce briefly Ludmila Voropai, who is an art history and aesthetics scholar, critique and curator. She studied philosophy, art history and media art in Moscow and Cologne. In her PhD dissertation, she focused on the historic development of discourses and particle practices of, particles, it's a Freudian slip, practices of institutional critique as well as the institutional establishment of media art. Julia Ils will follow her in the presentation. And she's an interdisciplinary researcher and designer and she works on the intersection of natural philosophy, media theory, and design. And she studied art and media studies in Constance and Cork. And she was working at the ZKM before and now affiliated with the HFG Karlsruhe, just as Ludmila Voropai. So thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and the stage is yours.
Hello, everybody. I hope some works. I'm very grateful to Livia and to the curatorial team that you invited us to take part in this, let's say, in the exhibition and to have this like wild experiment with notoriously adventurous HFG. It was a part of big collective work. Today all the work is collective, as we know, so it was another one example of it. And it took part really as a cooperation between the department, theory department, which I actually represent, Biodesign Lab and Product Design. So we will just like briefly introduce the results and the possibilities of this kind of interaction as well. I think after this kind of heavily, in a good sense, intense intellectual inputs and blowing mind sessions we had before, I think it's a time for rather classical reading in the late Saturday afternoon. We have also a sort of subdivision of labor in our presentation. As a theoretician, I'm responsible rather for meta-theoretical framing of the meta-matter, and Julia later will come and present proper, practical and concrete matter. And also I will just really try to be brief and do my presentation rather in a style of slightly poetical crypto-institutional critique intervention, but Okay, now jokes apart, it will get serious. Several years ago, art historian Risa Greenberg has introduced the concept of remembering exhibitions to define exhibitions which reconstruct in one or another form or explicitly refer to past exhibitions. She conceived them as a genre and differentiated within this genre 3 subgenres: the replica, the reef, and the reprise. A replica exhibition attempts to partially or fully recreate the content and the form of a past exhibition. A reef exhibition uses a past exhibition as a starting point, often highlighting contemporary parallels and interpretations. Finally, a reprise exhibition presents or recalls the exhibition in the form of catalog or virtual version with accompanying visual and textual information, like spatial plans, diagrams, exhibition views, photos, description of artworks shown, video tours, essays, chronology, notes, etc. If we consider the exhibition meta, non-meta, anti-meta as a remembering exhibition, then at a first glance it seems to be rather a combination of 3 subgenres mentioned above. But I would like to introduce a fourth concept for it, the exhibition translation. It is a translation in many regards: translation of history of exhibitions, of collective exhibition memory, of theory and practice of the past exhibitions into new space, new time, and maybe the most important here, into new media. In our case, it is a translation as mediation, or rather remediation and remediatization of les immaterial. In other words, it is an intermediate translation of its ideas, objects, curatorial approaches, and intentions into contemporary context, concerns, forms of presentation, and, last but not least, materials. The section of les immateriaux we referred to in our contribution to the meta, non-meta, anti-meta had a title, Deuxième peu, second skin. On the projection, you can see a depiction of the section from the original catalog of les immateriaux. The second skin section became a point of departure for our project entitled Second Skin N+1. Julia will go into details more into her part of the presentation, so I will just share some general conceptual remarks on our contribution. Our idea was to apply to the conceptual framework of the second skin those biomaterials which we were able to produce and to work with during this seminar in the Biodesign Lab of the HFG. Our seminar participants have explored in their works both aesthetical and functional potential of these biomaterials, which they used for creating the new skins. The second skin is something that replaces, strengthens, and enhances the first skin in its manifold functions, literally, but also metaphorically. This understanding and use of the second skin is perfectly illustrated by another image from the original les immateriaux catalog. The skin is a border and a mediator, and thus as medium. It protects, separates, and connects at the same time. It functions as a surface of a spatially differentiated object, making the form of the object perceivable to our senses, like an interface between different material substances which enables interaction between them. The skin is also a grateful metaphor for everything that fulfills these functions. This gives rise to concepts and corresponding artifacts and materials that might be defined and framed as a second skin. In the exhibition context, they can be presented only as aesthetic forms by suspending their functionality and restaging their materiality. Every act of aesthetic restaging thus becomes an intrinsically iconoclastic gesture which transforms and sublates an old form of representation through the new one. One is seduced to see here an analogy. Exhibition has for a museum as an institution a similar function, becoming in a way its second skin. Exhibition is its communicative surface to the outside world, its medium. In a complex and manifold relation of an art institution to the outside world, exhibition protect, separate, and at the same time connect them. They function as an interface, making museum perceivable for a larger audience and enabling an interaction between them. Conceptualization of exhibition as a medium has long become a topos within the curatorial theory. The idea of an art exhibition as a medium of knowledge, of aesthetical experience, of communication with the audience, etc., was developed over many decades by curators, art theorists, and critics. But I would like to focus here, in the first place, on a process of mediation which takes place there. The concept of mediation has quite a complex and well-charted philosophical genealogy, influenced in the first place by the Hegelian understanding of Vermittlung, as an indispensable moment of a dialectical becoming and transformation of any concept into one non-identical to itself. Adorno develops a Hegelian intellectual move further, stating that Vermittlung is a critical element of any social situation, including, inter alia, its economic and cultural dimensions. The concept of mediation in Adorno texts can be seen as a dialectic integration of binary oppositions between different categories. From this point of view, an artwork is a mediation of a general and the particular, of social and individual aspects through aesthetic forms and modes of expression. Generally speaking, an artwork is always a form of mediation of artist's intentions, social and economic conditions of its production, of the underlying ideology of the art field, and so on. But could an artwork successfully, that is, epistemologically effectively, mediate some theoretical content, for example, a set of philosophical ideas, critical statements, analytical perspectives? I think we can achieve this kind of mediation better if we create an assemblage of artworks in the context of a thematic art exhibition which aims to mediate a broader theoretical or historical complex. Remembering exhibitions can offer a daring attempt to mediate not only the history of exhibition making and its milestones, but the whole logic of functioning of the institutional exhibition apparatus. Recontextualization and restaging of its own past with the new materials is much more than a symptom of the notorious Derridian archive fever. Institutional memory is a sine qua non condition of an institutional present and future, which will always require the new skins. Julia, please follow up.
So, thank you, Ludmilla. Yeah, I'm here for the proper matter, apparently, so I'm actually quite ashamed that I didn't brought a sample from the lab, but the biodesign lab is, as Livia said, quite in the next door's institution, so just come by and explore our matters and material samples there. When it comes to design or artistic practices, the engagement with material is inevitable. And even if the idea or the concept has for a long time been important, if not the important aspect in our Western modes of production in recent decades, an increasing paradigm shift towards materiality and its peculiarities, as well as creative potentials, can be observed. With the project-based studies and teaching at the Staatliche Hochschule für Gestaltung, we are also a direct part of those discourses. Matter, material, materiality, be digital, mediated, or analog and physical. In the following, I will focus on the collaborative examination of so-called living, vibrant, or active materials. It goes without saying that working with living materials such as plants, microorganisms, or fungi is not fundamentally new, but still represents a relatively young subdiscipline for designers and artists. To get in touch with those topics and material properties, the Biodesign Lab has been established at the HFG since 2020 as a hybrid and evolutive environment for living matters in art design and research. Therefore, the lab focuses on the local region, its resources and opportunities, and actively aims to reshape and rethink modes of production in Karlsruhe and southern Germany. To interact with these issues and materials, both in digital and physical space, The lab invites local experts and visitors alike to work on collaborative projects. Knowledge about these resources is distilled through the creation of a know-how glossary and material library, communicated through virtual and physical workshops, as well as through the presentations of outstanding projects dealing with sustainable materials. So actually, if you look at this image, this is not a classic lab, if you might maybe know it in the natural scientists field. Yeah, the equipment actually also, it oscillates between maybe a molecular kitchen and a really basic lab environment. But yeah, we actually also thought, well, as a design on art school, maybe we shouldn't even try to be like natural scientists. We have really great laborers and scientists just next door with the KIT. So maybe it's not about having a lab in this classic sense, but maybe rethink it. So instead of this basic sterility with sluices, filters, and seclusion, the focus is rather on transparency and something I like to call a radical social contamination. A concept that is actually carried out in particular because we are, as I said, next door to the ZKM. And so we have actually quite some passengers going by every day, and then these tiny beautiful moments happening when just a museum visitor is going along and seeing stuff, coming into the lab, asking during a seminar session, what are you doing actually, can I touch that? So making these processes also visible and tangible, that's actually kind of a strong part of the concept there. Means the Biodesign Lab is an open lab for communication and exchange, a research incubator for active, vibrant, organic matters and discourses, an interdisciplinary link between the school departments and workshops, and a hybrid between curatorial platform, teaching, and project-related research. But these non-standardized materials need not only new spatial structures, but also require new strategies and ways of learning and knowledge exchange. Instead of supratemporal findings, we need to focus on, speaking with Donna Haraway and Karen Barat, situated knowledge structures and diffractive modes of teaching. So, means what knowledge can we gain if all knowledge and the production of knowledge are inseparably intertwined? And what perspectives can we take beyond dualisms and classifications with our anthropocentric gaze? And how can we dualisms and how can we collaborate with non-human actors in an artistic or creative process if we are at the same time operating within an institutionally regulated framework? So when it comes to work with and on material, there are numerous possibilities of approach. On one variant, for example, as you can see here on the slide, as the material-driven design method, which was developed by Elvin Karana and her team at the TU Delft. And also there, I won't go into detail with the graphs and how this is all working about, but the main focus is the playing and tinkering with material, and also being surprised by maybe some findings that come along the way. So I would also rather stress on maybe there's the benefit, or also what makes it interesting to think on an artistic perspective and a natural scientific perspective and to combine it together, because I think just the modes or maybe the approach can differ, but also benefit from each other. Oops. So to the second skin project that Ludmila already introduced you to. In this case, for the project, which happened actually, Livia approached us and asked hey, there was this historical exhibition, can you make a comment to that, deuxième peau, to this second skin art piece? And what we thought was, well, let's combine in that sense and make a wild, let's say methodolic approach on that. So what we did was I invited invited Ludmila and Freya and Antea. Ludmila is from the theory department, Freya is from the product design department. Antea and I were working in the biodesign lab, and we tried to create a multidisciplinary approach to make a comment on the second skin topic. So actually it's about this mix between the video was not showing, sorry. So we try to make this mix between a theoretical and practical approach. And that for this purpose, actually this deuxième peau, or the second skin, it served, as I said, for us as a reference and starting point for the further process. Les immatériaux and related discourses, well, I shouldn't just start with reading stuff, it's not my style actually, but well, that's an insight that we just go along the way. What you see here, or what you've seen in this video, was that we tried to get the students start with 4 different material approaches, because as it's, it comes clear, but maybe also not. For us, it was an exciting experience that museums and schools not always work along the way at the same time with the temporalities. So means the exhibition start was already in December. Our school or seminar term just starts in October. So what we tried was that we'd get the students quite quickly into the field and get them running. Means we gave them 4 material strengths that they followed. Means beeswax, kombucha, bioplastics, and latex. So these are all 4 bio-based materials that kind of vary in their livingness, also in their tangibility. And what we tried was, as Ludmilla already said, it was about getting the students into the idea of what is actually skin-like quality, what is is there a softness, is there a security aspect, and how can we how can we relate and how can we experiment on that? So, knowing does not come from standing at a distance and representing, but rather from a direct material engagement with the world. Loosely based on Karen Barrett's words, the students immersed in that sense themselves in their material groups, and the task was to conceive, realize and contextualize a project presentation for the exhibition Matter, Non-Matter and Antimatter within 5 weeks. So, as I said, it's about engaging the materials, so also about tinkering and maybe just play with the materials, and also in that sense it was latex. That was one part of the process. And however, the museum context made one thing also very clear to us. Not only the modes of production and knowledge exchange are challenged by new or living materials, the communicability and mediation of specific material peculiarities also requires alternative strategies. How is living moist SCOBY culture, a symbiosis of bacteria and yeast organisms, to be experienced if it has to be fed regularly? And how can decay or preservation of food be presented without triggering a conservatory nightmare? So when you were earlier in the exhibition with Livia and I mentioned the SCOBY part of the panel, I just saw her face like melting, like, what? Did you bring a living panel here in the museum? No, we didn't, but if we want to deal with that matters and going into the material, how can we approach it, and how can we also create structures around that? So when we work with objects and materials that are qua their definition in constant development and change, we need a living digital collection culture to make research and artistic production shareable and transparent. What you can witness here actually is the really elaborate approach by Hafke students to capture a SCOBY culture and make a 3D model out of it. So, on the traces of media reproducibility of the material, digital artifacts such as photogrammic 3D objects, microscopic images, film sequences, or animations were created within the framework of the works. Images of materiality. So, question is, was it transformation, or are we rather lost in translation? What it seems, or at least it seems to me, kind of that those tools and media of representation, and they may be laboratory apparatus, spatial arrangements, dispositives, or techniques, are not passive witnesses, but equally intertwined. and interactive agents of those collaborative processes. And then that's now where I'm ending. Perhaps this is precisely those, and these are maybe precisely these diffractive patterns of superimpositions, amplifications, fluctuations that, instead of reflection or representation, form the second skin of institutional memories if we think it through educational perspectives. And that would be the end from my side. Also, it was sorry, I thought I was another slide with all the credits from the people. Yeah, but thank you in that sense. If you have any questions right now, now's the time, or we go into the panel discussion. Okay.
Sollen wir runter oder hier oben bleiben?
So thank you very much for the presentation, and let's dive into the discussion. So please, all who would like to participate, come on stage. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for joining. I already introduced all of today's speakers. Just Alistair Hudson is new on the stage for today, who is the director of the ZKM. And I prepared a few questions, but whenever you have a question, please raise your hand and we will get a microphone to you. But maybe I would start first with a question that concerns, I think, most of you. Maybe not all of you. In this interdisciplinary round, it was very difficult to find questions that are relevant to all of your practices. But indeed, in the work of all of you, there are methodologies in the development processes. And maybe you all work with interdisciplinary processes and approaches. So how do these different disciplinary approaches and methodologies of your fields eventually overlap? Do you, if any of you see synergies, like throughout the talks you might have reflected on your own practice through the practice of another speaker? And for me, the main question is how can we learn from each other in on a methodological level? So maybe it's quite an abstract question, but I don't know. Who would like to start?
I have an idea, maybe. What I thought about today, when I was in the exhibition with you, and then after hearing the talks of you guys, that one topic that we are talking about today is the topic of the model and the topic of the experiment and the topic of the simulation. Mm-hmm. And this is something that struck me today when actually engaging with the exhibits in the exhibition today that I have seen for the first time in person today, that these are, methodologies that are present in almost any exhibit. That and that's something that maybe unifies all of our work. So that would be my my answer or my train of thought here.
Thanks. There's another one.
Yeah, and I could add to that to continue that train of thought, that it always strikes me that exhibitions are a really old-fashioned way of operating. You know, they kind of date from the middle of the 19th century, and they really haven't changed that much since. When actually, if you look at, for example, the kind of research in dark matter, this idea of modeling permutations first that then might become the reality, or several other options, that seems a much more smarter way to work, in a way, than creating this fixed model that then goes on in time and then ends.
No, absolutely. This was, by the way, also the first thing when we met a few weeks ago, the first time here in the exhibition. The language when talking about the digital twin or the simulation of things, this was actually a very similar language, but we approached this very differently. So for us, really, we need a one-to-one, more or less exact model of the real world to try out everything before we spend billions to search things in cool-looking labs or so. But yes, the language was surprisingly similar.
I think that we should do that as well, to simulate first and then realize. But yeah.
I just wanted to say, what? Cool-looking labs? What? No, but I think it's what I meant earlier also was like, if you think about this, maybe diffractive modes of acting, where I think artistic perspective and scientific perspective can maybe get a bit more intertwined or learn from each other, because I think the artistic approach is rather to be completely surprised by whatsoever will come out of it. And I think, at least it's how I understand natural scientific research. If you enter a paper and you have to think about, okay, what will be probably the outcome, and then you try to make the point how to come there. And I think maybe there is this surprising moment where maybe natural sciences could at least open up. And maybe for the artistic perspective, sometimes a bit more structure is also not too bad. I don't know how you would back me up here or not.
I mean, coming back to the question of Livia, if I read the concept of the exhibition Renaissance 3.0, you have an impression that really now, praxeologically speaking, we all do the same. Yeah, we are sitting in front of our laptops, producing kind of PowerPoint keynote presentations, performs them on the stage. So at this level, of course, I mean, phenomenologically, it's the same kind of activity. No, but I mean, like being now being a bit more serious. I think it's just like the question, we are learning from each other all the time. And I think that's a question of like crossing the boundaries. It's like coming back to the discourse of obsolescence is also something outdated. We are already crossed all the possible boundaries. They don't exist anymore. They're suspended. So I'm just like trying to get what... where are the boundaries at all? Yeah, I mean, we are just like all the time in this constant process of, let's say, influencing each other on the modes of presentation, but also on the modes of producing, let's say, stuff. Yeah, it doesn't matter what kind of text production we talk about, but it's enormous similarity.
Indeed, but if I may, there has been new methodologies, and there are a few new methodologies suggested in the exhibition Matter, Non-Matter, Antimatter that are gathered there, and they are all based on digital tools. So yes, the medium of the exhibition exists for quite a while, but if it can get twisted by such tools, which have to be developed first, and this is the core idea of the Matter, Non-Matter, Antimatter exhibition. So. Yes, just a side note, but I didn't want to interrupt. I think, Jeremy, you...
No, I agree with everyone. One thing I think that might be an interesting perspective from a media artist is we don't... control and chance are definitely two variables, like you said, that we were playing with, but the new media artists generally, like historically speaking, was actually never thought of it as a fixed form. So it was always considered a living media, and one that was prone to decay and actually to die, because a lot of early media not only had obsolescence but used magnetic energy that was actually like, prone to like demagnetizing, right? Literally, and like the particles that you talk about, maybe that's like part of it, but there was this, invisible force that was going to destroy it. And so there's this idea that like the art actually does not happen here, it happens here in the head, which I think also relates to like, this metaphysics in a way, right? Which is if 80% of the world is unknown, this is also the starting position of the artist, which is we start from the position of the majority of understanding is unknown, and therefore our job is to create the maximum opportunity for all of the humans on the planet to discover that potential energy. Anyway.
I actually want to answer to all. This all resonates with me. I think first, yes, we have a structured approach, but I think most of the huge breakthroughs were by chance, things we did not expect. So Vera Rubin did not expect to see this. This was by chance. We switch on our huge machines and we hope to understand them, but of course we don't, right? I think the good simulations are just the tool to at least get some handle to understand a machine that is twice the large as this room here, right? If you don't have a good idea, this completely fails. But what I also would like to add, I mean, the methodology development is also super relevant in our field. So this takes decades to develop some of the tools, and then it's fun to show a nice picture. But in actually, there are many people working behind this. Interdisciplinary, by the way. I think we didn't touch this so far so much, right? So working with informatics for us, with engineering. By the way, these experiments, we are 3,000 people on these experiments. This is sociologically not easy to handle 3,000 people with a PhD working towards the same goal.
Yeah, so 3,000 PhDs.
Nice.
Yeah. So maybe the unifying thing is really a serendipity, that we're all not knowing what we're doing, but in the end, something cool comes out of it. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, well, genuine curiosity is important in all of our fields then. I would have another question, taking on the simulation idea, since simulation is maybe more relevant in the experiments, Torben, you mentioned, but there's also a sort of word making happening in computer games, but also one could call it word making. What we suggested through the exhibition models, and if we are at exhibition models, I would maybe steer the topic towards museums. And ask your thoughts about wording and the role of museums in wording, so the creation of new words or word making. So what do you think? What is the role of for example, the perfect museum in creating these new words? Is it some sort of speculative fabulation, and or maybe something different? So does the museum show possible societal directions, and how may the different directions in the museum overlap? Whomever who would like to. Yeah, thank you.
Well, things I've just taken on a big museum. Well, it's not a museum, but it's it's museum-like. I think one of the issues that we have to consider is that places like this can't create a world on their own, and if I understand worlding correctly, it's actually about creating an emotional attachment between the subject and the world they live in, or the world that is created, even if, you know, whether it's in a kind of, you know, synthetic experiment or whether it's in gaming or whatever it is, it's about that emotional connection and how you develop that. And even goes back to, I think the origin of the term is in post-colonial theory as well, which is about how the colonizers would use various tactics to connect with and take mastery over wherever they conquered. So in a way, I think, whilst we're not going down that route somewhere like this, what the institution does have to do is to work with people and these technologies in order to kind of create a world that is sort of worth living in. And it can't do that on its own as an isolation chamber anymore. You know, the museum was, you know, conceived as that. It was a kind of grabbing of stuff in the world and making a, you know, an isolated space. Whereas actually now it's the opposite now, where actually these institutions have to connect with the world and kind of operate on a one-on-one scale, you know, which is actually then what technology enables us to do. So I think what's quite nice about some of the things we see in the exhibition are that these are, you know, these are kind of methodologies and tactics with technology that you can use for people to reconnect emotionally with all these different worlds, but they all intersect. And then we have to remember that they can't be in isolation, but they actually all overlap. You know, a bit like the way the sort of world of dark matter, we know kind of should overlap with the, you know, 20% material world. We don't know how yet. It's a little bit the same with the museum. We know how it should, but it doesn't quite do it yet.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Indeed, I was trying to refer to two different types of wording. The one you mentioned in post-colonial theory, that so building up a word through the sight of someone else, through the guidance of a native. But there's another understanding of wording that is indeed the creation of new words on its own in a processual way. So it's a processual ontology that relates to technology and the theory of technology very deeply. And what I followed up in through the exhibition as well, that these two types of wordings not necessarily or don't necessarily overlap, although they eventually should. Yeah, sorry, Ludmila?
No, I just wanted maybe to ask you, Alistair, when you said that exhibition became a kind of obsolete format, I'm just thinking, what would be the other possibilities? Because I mean, it's a kind of format of precisely to produce this kind of both emotional and aesthetical, let's say, interaction of the subject with a kind of environment which we produce. And it's also like a format of the public presentation and public exchange. Yeah, it's a sort of producing publicity. Öffentlichkeit, as you call it in German. So what would you have in mind as a, let's say, other possible formats, especially regarding, let's say, the institutional framework of places like ZKM? I'm just asking out of pure curiosity. What would be an alternative to the exhibition?
Well, for me, the alternative would be you'd carry on showing art or working with art and artists or working with concepts and materials and people, but you would no longer be constrained by this idea of creating an exhibition, which roots are very much in a kind of power game, and they're wrapped up in economics and social constructions. The history of the exhibition was all about a mode of representation. And for me, the step we need to take is to go from a world of representation, which is all about creating the picture, something else outside or something else over there, to a world of operation where we're all in it and it's working and it's doing things in the world in an active sense, no longer just pointing at it. And I think that's reflected a little bit in some of the things we heard about the gamification as well, which is about, it's no longer about just speaking to people and talking to people. And the exhibition's all wrapped up in that language of, here's a set of stuff and this is what it is, and it starts and it finishes, then it's gone, then you're on to the next thing. Whereas actually, the way people work in the world mostly is they continually evolve and change and think and revisit and move. And I think an institution should be like that too. And it should be a place that is active and where people come to be active, and they're, kind of embroiled in the construction and making, and it becomes a laboratory in effect, in a kind of an old-fashioned sense. I think people used to talk about museums as laboratories in the 80s and 90s, but there was something in that, even if the language is a bit redundant.
But what will you do with the people who still have this kind of strange inertia and the will to come to the museum and to see the stuff, to see the exhibition?
Well, put them in a museum.
Don't want to be active. They want to be, let's say, passive, entertained in a good way. And so, what kind of let's say strategies to deal with this kind of the audience? I mean, because the audience is also very fragmented, or also very manifold in its desires, aspirations, expectations. So how to deal with, let's say, remnants of maybe the older paradigms? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you necessarily have to do away with that paradigm. It's still there, and you can still do it. You can have, for example, an entity like ZKM operating in the world, doing things, activating, connecting, educating, creating, but at the same time have stuff you can, if you just want to come and see some stuff, you can still come and see some stuff. In the same way that, this exhibition that we have at the center of our discussion, you can, in one sense, we were talking about this yesterday, you can come, there's lots of text, there's lots of dense material, but if you want, you can just come and walk through and go, oh, Geoffrey Shaw's really cool. I really like that. And then, go on to the next thing. On another level, you can really get involved and start to understand how these technologies work, maybe get involved in developing them. It is a kind of open door. So you don't have to, you can have two things at the same time. You don't have to have replace one with the other.
So we will not, we keep to the material. The material will be there after this exhibition as well.
Hanging on the wall, maybe.
Yeah.
But one good example, if I understand you correctly, would be the exhibition open codes that have been shown at ZKM, right? So more some kind of experiment, an exhibition as a social practice, some kind of system even, and that brings me to video games again, or to games in general, because we have this concept that is rather old, from the 1920s already, by Johann Huizinga, who wrote this Homo Ludens book that is a seminal piece of cultural history and anthropology, and he coined this notion of the magic circle, the so-called Zauberkreis, the magic circle. Every game is constructing a kind of system, a kind of rule-based social system around itself. And if we play a game together, we play chess, then we tacitly understand the rules and how this game works. So the actual game is not only happening on the table, on the chessboard, but also between people. And this might be maybe a fruitful idea to understand this exhibition practice as a social system even more. Just my 2 cents.
Yes, just maybe a short comment also on that. Because I think it goes in the direction that we have, the idea is to rethink the structures, or maybe also the methods of the institution, and maybe, because we're now talking a lot of humans, maybe we can also get an inspiration of the non-human world, because something is what's really striking if you're working with these non-human entities and organisms is that they give a crap about your deadlines, which is really actually one major learning that I got from the whole biodesign field. Because if you try and want to, I don't know, let a chair grow out of fungi, and the fungi is just not ready when you have your due date, then you're screwed. So I think it's the same if you, yeah, but if you have your exhibition opening, it's a really serious thing that everything needs to be on point there. And why? But of course, these deadlines are human-made, yeah. And maybe that's the first thing. Like, how can we challenge these structures and these apparently God-given methods how an exhibition or how this whole structure has to work? So maybe there are some inspirations there from the non-human world speaking. Yeah.
More organic institutional structures.
Living
structures.
I'll just say that's called the internet. So.
Welcome to the 21st century, you know. Go to TikTok.
The internet is a living structure. And I think artists have practiced on the internet outside of the institutional lens for 30 years now. And a lot of those histories haven't been captured. They've disappeared, just as a fungi might disappear. But there are hundreds, if not thousands, of artists and then millions of people who are contributing to a cultural living organism called the internet every day. So.
But maybe also what Ludmilla, what you said, I mean, the temporalities are overlapping somehow. There are not only artists working with the internet. No, sorry. But I think it's a crucial question how to approach all these different methods, because if there's somebody coming with the painting and it's about insurancy, it's about, okay, how light or how bright can the light be, how's the whole the material aspects of the whole stuff, how to deal with that. And I think that's maybe also, I don't know, I cannot answer it, but I think where the whole utopian idea becomes maybe a little bump when it's like, okay, how to deal with the matter stuff. The stuff, I think it's all about the stuff that we're talking about. Oh, stuff and stuff, yeah.
Well, another postulate of the exhibition is that digital objects are as material as physical objects, because they are bounded on the one hand, because they are bounded to physical material, but on the other hand they have certain agency as much as physical objects. And in that sense it's pretty hard to distinguish between a physical, let's say, exhibition space and a digital exhibition space. This is why also the exhibition models that we conceived are part of a physical exhibition, but they are also available online. So the hybridity and interconnectedness of these two networks or two organisms or two realities, or however we call it, is vital and is crucial, and it's just something we cannot avoid, probably. And also in this sentence I refer to maybe something that cannot be distinguished, the living and the non-living matter. That's maybe the next chapter, to matter, non-matter, antimatter, the living and the non-living matter. And whether there's a distinction between them or there's a trans matter coming after all these matters.
Exhibition opening in 2024 then.
Maybe later. Yes, so maybe getting back to practicalities as a last question. And to the responsibilities to our fields that are very different from each other. But design and science and also an art center has the task, beside its own research, to sensibilize and to raise consciousness of a certain topic, and I was going to ask all of you about that. So, I mean, computer games are quite an issue. They are a health issue, actually. The WHO already declared that computer games can be very harmful. How do you make your students conscious about this?
Yes, they can be, I think. First of all, talking about video games is, well, we cannot talk about the video game. It's not possible because there are hundreds or thousands of different iterations and different games. Actually, you cannot compare. I don't know, a massively multiplayer online video game, RPG like World of Warcraft with Candy Crush or Tetris. It's two completely different things. But of course, they're bad games, they're good games. And one of, well, my opinion on the topic is that we have to raise consciousness and to have an ethical understanding of what we are actually doing with the medium. So it's crucial, I think, that video games as media or as a medium are under critical scrutiny, and that they are, well, and the producers are held responsible for producing games that are harmful and games that are menschenverachtend. I don't know the English word at the moment. And that's why when I talk to my students about this topic, is that I talk to them about video games as expressive media and artistic media that is capable of showing and expressing everything besides harmful things and so on. So video games can be an artistic medium, but of course there are video games that are really bad, and I don't like them either. So it's about critical scrutiny, and it's about an ethical competence with the medium, I think.
May I also have a question to you, Stefan? Because I was like really largely impressed by the project by Kipchak, out of many reasons, because maybe Doom was the game when my gamer career started and ended on one hand, but also I saw like enormous both educational and psychotherapeutic potential in those kind of games. I know many people who would maybe like to extend this kind of game for their collegial context. So is it possible to develop it further so I can just like run and with a chain. No, but I mean just like now it would be more serious and more pointed the question. Do you see in this kind of games, is it like pure, how should I put it, iconoclastic gesture, or is it a kind of insider joke, or I mean, it's both, of course, but how much can we, let's say, extend this conceptual approach, and with what kind of added value at the end? What is the surplus value?
Well, Arsdoom, it's this project called Arsdoom, and I think, first of all, I think it's a joke. I really think it's a joke, and they meant it as a joke. And Peter Weibel was he loved fun, and he thought that it would be a cool, disruptive idea to take this first-person shooter of that time, 1993. It came out in 1993, and it was, of course, at that time already discussed a lot about why the brutal aspects of the game. Can they be harmful or not, and so on. So they took it and they flipped it upside down, and they used it as a joke in order to make a point, and in order to criticize art institutions, I think, and some elitist approach of art as an institution, art as a system, art as a closed space, and the institutions as closed spaces. But the added value in the end is that it introduced a new medium into art history. And that is something bold, I think, that there was some new medium, the video game as artistic material, that has been introduced by this project by Peter Weibel and the others into art history. And of course we see that here interactive media can be perceived can be perceived in many different contexts. And that can be an added value too. So this Arsdoom project is something very interesting because it comes from popular culture. This Doom game, right? It was a popular video game at the time, played by many. First of all, teenagers, but they took this popular medium and they recontextualized it as a ready-made, some sort of, and this is this was some kind of cool disruptive idea at the time in order to introduce a new medium into art history.
So I'm saying it should be recontextualized and make an update version.
Maybe, yeah. I'm all in. Let's go.
Just a short comment, because also what you said, Livia, about this, what is the responsibility that the institutions have, or also maybe also the professions. I think what's interesting in gaming, or at least not all the games, but what I find interesting in that also comes to scientific communication. I think the responsibility is to create somehow an affection and emotion where you can reach the people. Because if we look, for example, into arts, I wouldn't say every artist, definitely not, but it's kind of a thing that we have these closed circles, these closed wordings, not worldings, but wordings, where in this ivory tower where no one can access it. So I think if it comes to responsibility, then it's be responsible to be accessible, and then it's like, okay, how to create it and find words or find a common language, actually. I think that's also something really important, because, okay, of course it's about distinction, and it's about somehow getting money or thinking economical, but also it's about, okay, how to share. And I think that's the challenge, at least that I see the big challenge in how to approach these issues. Oh, okay.
I was just going to jump in and say there are some really good examples of artists that use video games as sites for performance. Like, and one that would be, just to jump off of what you said, would be Angela Washko, who's an American artist who performed inside of World of Warcraft. It gave feminist discussions and seminars, and it would approach some of the more chauvinist members of the World of Warcraft community directly in their world. So to speak to like different worlds, these worlds are operating anyway, and artists are occupying a lot of these sites and actually doing some of this work that is institutional work. But I think that's the tradition actually that I would uphold, was the artists working with the institution to help connect those communities to the reality, right? Like, because to your point, the ivory tower can sometimes get so opaque you can't even see, there's no windows left, right?
I have a remark too. There is this concept of citizen science that's engaging, normal people, you and me, into natural science, right? And there is this beautiful project called Folded. It's by the University of Washington, and it was actually shown at ZKM in the context of the Global Games exhibition during Globale. Folded was a game, a puzzle game that was connected to the servers of the University of Washington's biology department, and you could solve puzzles, meaning actually what you really did was to solve fold proteins, and you actually, by playing the game, research data was generated. And they even could take this research data, and they really, the real scientists could use it in order to decipher a protein that is responsible for HIV infections in some ape populations. And this is some beautiful concept of taking a popular medium, a video game, remodeling it into a scientific model, actually, and then engaging the outside world with it as a social experiment, reaching out and permeating boundaries and bubbles. That's cool, I think.
No, I think this responsibility part of explaining our own research, I was actually surprised, because for us, you guys do so well explaining your research. For us, we live in an ivory tower. We spend a lot of money, a lot of years, and we also try to explain this to the public, and I think we have to. And this is also why we are here, of course. But I'm always surprised that you think you live in an ivory tower. I just wonder where we live then. Because I think your stuff is really, comparably accessible.
It's a concurrating to each other ivory towers, you know. It's just but just like it's very interesting to observe that any kind of the discussion I observed last time when artists and scientists come together in a panel, it just like ends up in the developing, let's say, optimization of the science communication instruments, methods, and it's, I think, like generally speaking, of course, like popular science is a great thing, and of course, it's enormous potential to, let's say, to collaborate at this level. I just like ask, what is, let's say, what is the goal of the science communication beyond like normal establishing the discourse of legitimization, and also I mean, it has some aspect of course, good edutainment. Yeah, I mean, it's not. I'm not saying it in a kind of negative sense. I mean, it can be very positive quality. But what is like beyond and behind? What would be the let's say primary goal beyond just like creating this kind of intellectual entertainment on a high scale?
Oh, I think there are several aspects. I think one thing that I think personally is very important is kind of what data literacy is. So I think we actually have to educate people about scientific practices. Doesn't really matter if this is physics or biology. I think in the end, the science principles are very similar. It's motivating young people to actually study and not already in school distinguish that certain groups of people will never end up in academia. I think these are all the other aspects, in addition to this edutainment, of course.
In a way, it's a form of involvement as well, isn't it? It's not just you speaking to and justifying your your gigantic funding models and so on as well. But it's actually about bringing people in and people feeling part of it. And I think it's when it's the same with the citizen science thing, or with kind of more participatory practices in art. If people feel like they're contributing and joining in, that creates a better social pact, and it creates a better energy. Where people are actually in it and enjoying it, for their own sense, even like curating in the perfect museum. I was going to have marble floors installed, by the way, after this.
I have a weird question though, because I'm not involved in the science community at all. But like points made earlier, we're pointing at in the art institutional context, we're starting a journey into decolonization that we're only a few decades into, but. Do you guys have conversations about decolonizing particle physics, or how does that happen?
That's a good question. That's a good question. So what exactly do you mean with decolonizing
Well,
particle
like
physics.
you're like a white man of a certain age, like standing on a stage in front of people telling them this is the truth about the world and I'm going to blow your mind, right? Like I satirized that somewhat as well. Like, and I think you did a really great job, by the way. So it's not about you, but it's just like in that context, like how do you, like, because we're talking about human understanding, like, you know, who gets to decide what human understanding is?
No, okay, this is a very relevant point. I think we are trying there. The challenge in these kind of science is that this is we need high-tech industries around this, which is, I mean, almost automatically right now, meaning you do this research in the US, in Europe, or in Japan. China and Russia, similar, but kind of a little bit disconnected. I think we are trying to engage other countries. I mean, Africa, for example, is for us, there is almost nothing happening. Asia, apart from Japan and China and India, is also not much happening in our front. But I think it's very hard because we need this high-tech industry around us. Not taking away here my responsibility, but
so it's embedded in capital, like
absolutely, yes.
Okay, so that's we can get even more complicated.
It's worse, yes.
Yeah, that's a spiral for sure, but.
That's not the best last word, unfortunately. Although it was a great answer, that's true. But at this point, I would open up the discussion and ask if anyone has a question for a remark. Yes? Oh, yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Felix.
Thank you. Hello. I'm an art mediator here at the ZKM, and I've got lots of experience guiding people through this exhibition, and the people are always blown away by, wow, that's so cool, because, for example, this exhibition, it ends tomorrow. And the people who visited my guided tours today, they said, oh, I'm so lucky I was able to experience this exhibition. And maybe that's the point. I've always get these kind of questions. Okay, can I visit other exhibitions that took place at the ZKM in any form? Or is there any access to these exhibitions who are not longer here to visit for them? And because my question for you is, how will you implement these tools and these ideas that you developed at the project Beyond Matter and at this exhibition? Will you take these tools and implement them at the future exhibition making and at to the operating ZKM working space to ensure that people can access exhibitions that have passed? Is there any plans or projects to implement the tools that you so with a lot of effort created and did research about? What's the plan?
Thank you for the question. It's very relevant. And well, certain tools will definitely feed in the operation, not only of the ZKM, since it was a collaborative project, and there were tools similar to ours developed at other partners, and these tools will be used also by the partners. Specifically, we will release so-called generic exhibition platform that is based on the software we created for Iconoclash. And this will enable other studios, curators, museums who would like to create their own exhibition models to do so. So it will be open source and it will be available online. So we were not just thinking of the ZKM, but to the entire community. Yeah, that would be my answer for that.
May I ask also you a question? I have to out myself as a very old-fashioned aesthetical experience fetishist. But the question is, what do you think, where are the limits of, let's say, digital archiving and reconstruction of exhibitions, which are also like spatial, temporal, etc. experience? So, I mean, it's great for me if I go to the beyond, and I mean, it's not a critique, it's just an observation. It's great if I go to the exhibition and I can put this virtual reality set and see a kind of reconstruction of like possible speculative reconstruction on how did it look like in the Lisa material. But the question is, where would be the, let's say, the limits of this approach, and what would be also other possible forms of conserving and restoring these forms of experience?
I can briefly answer that I don't know. But it's a beautiful research question for the next round.
But, I mean, surely the next step is hybridity, isn't it?
It is already there.
Yeah. So, but that needs to be developed more. So in a way, there's still a limit in terms of the functionality, of the accessibility, the language of these kind of these tools that are being created. So they need to be developed more into the future. But at the same time, there's an enormous capacity for those to work with physical collections, you know, and there's people I know, artists and programmers now working on this hybridity question, where you can kind of take artifacts from the museum, kind of remediarize them, send them out into the world, hybridize them with things in people's lives to make new objects, send those back into the museum, you know, really play with the material of collections and objects in new ways that we haven't really tested yet. And I think the technology is always your horizon line, and its practical application is always the horizon line. So I think we have to keep pushing that to make sure that we're actually doing it as well. You know, and that does mean following through on a lot of the things that have grown through this project.
Hi, I have a question too. Thank you very much for the discussion. As an architect, I'm very curious, what is your spatial experience? We'll be dealing with doppelgangers or digital twins and physical twins for a very long time, as they are our tools and a medium also. And I'm very curious, what is your spatial experience when you are building these models and these experiments and this simulation, as you said? For example, in gaming or as a media artist, when you put marble as a texture, is there an understanding of the material? Is there an understanding of the spatial experience? Or when you do, for example, experiments with biomaterial, is there also understanding of the spatial experience? Or in a sense, can it become more than just an experiment? Thank you.
I can talk about the biomaterials. Just start with the marble, follow with biomaterials.
No, you go.
No, you first.
I'll just very quickly address the marble issue. I mean, for me as an artist, obviously I don't like the material properties of marble in the virtual space are nowhere near what they are in the virtual space, but that's the opportunity, obviously, for play and for irony, right? Like, because we're talking about permanence when we talk about marble, right? This thing that will last centuries, and then to bring that in the digital space is like specifically an ironic gesture in my case. So I don't know if that's going to tie in, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think if it comes to biomaterials in the built environment or architecture, I think that's a completely other big topic. But I mean, the thing that we approach there is like that biomaterials in themselves, their definition, they are in the best case also biodegradable, and then we have this conflict with long-lasting, which we want somehow our houses to be, if we don't want them to fall apart in the next rain. So to implement like alternative biomaterials, there comes a lot of research and also repetitions, testing. That is something, for example, we cannot deliver in that lab. If we call it a lab, it's a social lab, not a classic lab where you do these testings. But if you want to implement a new material, for example, like mycelium, like fungi, mycelium as a building material, they have to do a lot of testings. And of course there are limits, but I guess the idea goes a bit in the same direction that we discussed earlier about what is actually building? What is this whole architectural understanding? Can we rethink the way our houses work? So if we want to implement new materials, but it's a lot about material and biomaterials, of course.
I'm quite curious to know the KIT perspective on that question as well. Like, how do you think about the experience of, I did the VR thing before, and it is a really special experience and really transports you into that world. But how much do you think about aesthetics, of your environment you're working in, of the simulations, of the experience?
That's a tough question. I'm also not speaking for KIT, I think, now. Yeah. I think KIT's view on aesthetics in buildings is probably not a topic we should discuss. I mean, we are living. All the people that joined here from my group as well. We are not living in a very nice building, I would say. It's a rather old building. I think it does not play a super important role what the aesthetics of the place we are working at is. It plays a role where the experiments are, though. I mean, for example, my experiment is in Japan. This is very hard to reach, which is now a 14-hour flight. That makes it very difficult to get there. Going to CERN, for example, on the other hand, it's just a train right away. So these things play a role, but I think aesthetics itself is, at least not in our day-to-day discussion, an important topic.
But maybe the communication as well aspect.
The communication is a very important aspect. The communication is always international.
Aesthetic presentation.
To me personally, it is very important to deliver the message in a very clean way. I think a lot about how I deliver the message. I think the images we show, they are very strong. I mean, we condense work of 10,000 people over 20 years in one powerful image. I think my goal in such an audience is always to simplify it so that it does not become wrong, which, I mean, it's not meant as a joke. It's really hard to condense things so that whatever you say is still correct, because not just entertaining, there is still the scientific part.
I should like to extend the question. I was curious, what is the purpose of building such a VR space of the Bell laboratory?
Okay, yeah, so I mean, this, I think, for this particular one is really just meant as an outreach tool to explain how our detectors work. We realized, though, that in teaching, so even in our particle physics courses, this is very powerful. Even for our students, it's sometimes difficult to visualize these complicated topologies that you have seen on the VR headset in just a plain view on 2D. But even the experts here in the room, we really have to look by eye on many of these collisions to find patterns. By the way, I find it funny, nobody mentioned artificial intelligence so far. That's very rare. No, but this is, by the way, I'm not... So this is our day-to-day work. We develop AI tools, the most powerful you can think, to analyze these structures. But first, we need domain knowledge, and humans have to look at the things. It's not that AI can do the job for us. This is an important tool to visualize things for us. It's very hard to visualize these particle collisions, and 3D is much easier than 2D. I would like to visualize in 4D and 5D, but we are failing yet. Maybe the colleagues can help.
But how much data visualization is not only like mediation tool, but also epistemic tool? Is it also that precisely through the visualization, is it also you can like better develop some mathematical models? And
absolutely, yes. I think many of the things your brain will spot patterns looking at many of these events way before maybe you have a mathematical tool to really describe them. No, it's absolutely important. But not necessarily simplified VR things, but we have similar displays, typically a bit more technical, that we use on a day-to-day basis a lot.
Are there any further questions?
Last question, maybe from my side. Do you think that digital marble is more sustainable than digital plastic?
That's really interesting. I mean,
it's Earth Day today.
I don't know how to, but it's actually a really good question. Depends on what more sustainable means in what regard. Yeah, because depending on the algorithm, you could look at how much. Yeah, one might use more carbon than the other in processing power. So anyway, so you could get down to that level. Yeah, but no, I like the question. I'm going to think about it and get back to you.
Then, is there a further question?
No, I just wanted to say there are no more questions from the audience. So I think you're good to close the panel.
Yeah, thank you very much. thank you for all of you for being with us today, and thank you for joining the finissage of the exhibition Matter, Non-Matter, Antimatter. Thank you for joining us and listening to the presentation and possibly visiting the exhibition. And I would like to also thank the technical team who were with us, and not to forget the team of the exhibition, some of whom are still here. Felix Koberstein, who co-curated the exhibition and kindly organized this weekend, and Marianne Schiedler, who was the managing editor around the whole process, and also Moritz Konrad, who already left, but he was also part of the curatorial team, and I'm very grateful that I could work with them. So thank you very much and have a nice evening. And if you would like to, you can still visit the exhibition tomorrow. There will be running lectures from 11 by Stefan Schwingeler, and from 2 p.m. By Torben Ferber. Exactly, and they will enlighten different aspects of the exhibition based on their field. Let's see. Yes. So thank you and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Können wir ein Foto?